during COVID. So in a way, it's not surprising what went on behind the scenes because we saw enough stuff that went on in front of us. But you have to ask yourself a question. The 25th Amendment to get rid of a president is a very difficult thing to do. Needs cabinet approval, excuse me, vice presidential approval, et cetera. And you read this and you go, where's the protection here? Where's the protection for the American public? And there seems to be really none.
Well, he argues that he was part of the protection, which is why he stayed, even though he couldn't.
That's the rationale, right?
He was in.
One of his examples, I think, that goes to that is this example where he says he was worried that Trump could use the military, because obviously Trump's the commander in chief. He could use the military to seize ballot boxes. And that goes to Esper's talk about people staying, trying to preserve control, trying to sort of run interference on that stuff. What do you think about that revelation?
It's not surprising. He wanted to use the military for in a much more aggressive way during the Black Lives Matter protests, according to not just this book, but others, and didn't understand why the chairman of the Joint Chiefs was saying, no, that's not what we do in the United States of America. We don't do that. I mean, you have the National Guard, and that's decided based on a specific set of criteria. But this is a different story when you're talking about the United States military. And I think if you when you boil down to the message that Mark Esper was trying to get across in this book, what he says is that he believes that Donald Trump is out for one person and one person only, himself, for his own political future, for his own reputation, and that he doesn't have what it takes to be a public servant, to put even one iota of the public good over anything else. And I think if there's one takeaway, that is probably it. Again, what we need to do is remember that this is also a man with a reputation who wants to try to keep it intact. And he clearly feels like his reputation was tarnished having worked for Donald Trump.
I think there are a lot of people who worked in that White House, who I've spoken with and you've spoken with, who are kind of going through a little bit of personal therapy here because they're trying to figure out what they saw, exactly what they saw, what they did and what they didn't do. And, we've seen that in Stephanie Grisham, for example, who's written about this. Now Mark Esper has written about this. And there seems to be a need, yes, they want to sell books, but there seems to be a need to kind of lift the veil and tell the American public, look, this is what we went through and this is why it cannot happen again. And I think we ought to kind of take that message, and members of Congress ought to figure out what they ought to be able to do about that. And I think that, in a way, is what the January 6th committee is going to be talking about.
And if I just